Well, it's always a delight to have Dennis Richardson in the house, but now he's wearing a different hat. Candidate for governor, Dennis Richardson, and certainly still sitting representative from Southern Oregon. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well.
Good to see you.
Nice
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
You don't look too beat up. It's only been a couple of weeks.
No, I'm all in. I retired from my law practice in Central Point, and it's all about representing this state. I have one client now, and that is, the population, the people, the average folks. And I've been that way in the legislature, and now to be running for governor is it's a wonderful opportunity to get all over the state, meet with people, and listen to their concerns. What are the problems? What is keeping our economy from flourishing? We've got such a wonderful state.
Yeah.
We have natural resources, deep water ports. We're on the West Coast. We have human resources, good education system, and we have people that want to work. But we continue with high unemployment. In fact, it just went up to 8% when the national average went down. We have to have a change in leadership, and that is going to happen at the ballot box.
All right, let me back up, because you can get into campaign mode real easy.
I can.
But let me ask you this. Running for governor, I mean, what made you decide to do this?
Well, Kathy and I struggled for a long time over whether or not we could do this. It means leaving the House, and I won't be able to run for re-election. And so as of a year from November, I'll either be the governor or I'll be out of government service, and I'll go into other service. It's okay. But we just felt that what I've learned in the legislature is extremely valuable. Being co-chair of Ways and Means and being down in the legislative fiscal office where you actually craft the budgets and to see how things really happen, it's very important information. But unless you can implement policy changes, whoever has the power just does what they want.
You have been kind of noted as the budget hawk. I mean, serving in that co-chair capacity got you right down to the nitty-gritty of all this stuff. And you came out with your eyes kind of wide open, didn't you? I
really did. When we had a 30-30 split in the House, and I was co-chair of Ways and Means with Peter Buckley, and then the other co-chair was Senator Richard Devlin, so you had two Democrats and then myself as a conservative Republican, it was interesting to see the approach to budgeting. I mean, their approach is, let's go ahead and see what we want to spend and then figure out where the money is going to come from. And I said, no. You can't do that in your home. You first have to see how much money do you have to spend, and then you prioritize your spending, and then when you run out of money, you quit spending. And so we struggled with that difference in perspective for a few weeks. And finally, because we couldn't go forward unless all three of us agreed, we decided that we would look at it that way.
All right, so after great consideration, you and your wife taking long walks, thinking about this, praying about this, you decided to jump in. It's a big thing, isn't it?
It's huge. I mean, we have a large state. And so I'm all over the state. I'm spending a substantial amount of time in Multnomah County, Clackamas, and Washington County, and then all over the rest of the state, and that'll increase as time goes on. I want to take a large trip in October and early November around rural Oregon and get to places I've never been before and talk to people who don't often get heard and listen to what they have to say.
Of course, as you know, I ran for the 2nd Congressional District, and you talk about rural Oregon. I mean, you'll stop in places where there's 5 or 6 people.
That's right.
But that's grassroots America. It's grassroots Oregonians.
It is. And to win, I have to have turnout. I have to have people that will believe that we can save our state, that we can change its course, and not just stay home. They need to vote.
All right, let's get into some of this. Is there enough money to do what we need to do?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
I mean,
that's pretty simple.
In 2011-13, we have a 2-year budget for Oregon. It was 10% higher than it was the 2 years before that. And now we've just finished crafting the 2013-15 budget, and it's 13% higher than it was in the last 2 years. And yet, what we're told is, I have to have tax increases. After all, it's for the kids. And I mean, we had this great scene. I wish it would have been filmed. The governor comes into the Republican House caucus. It's end of June, and it's toward the end of the session. And he says, I really need your help. We need a few votes to raise these taxes, because with another $275 million, we can help the kids' education. We can help with mental health for the kids. This is really for the kids, and I need your help. So I raise my hand. I say, Governor, the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and you're the governor. if this was an important priority, you could have done this last March. Now, I understand the political game. You come in at the end so that you can blame the Republicans for blocking you from doing other additional spending. But since you control everything, all we give you is a quorum, and you have a 13% increase in spending. I mean, $2 billion of more money. How do you expect us to really, take you seriously on this? And he kind of said, well, Dennis, you understand how the game's played.
And that was his answer?
Well, what he said, you understand how this goes.
Yeah, okay.
Something like that. He had no answer because he had delayed implementing and passing the K-12 budget with the Democrats' leadership in the House and the Senate all the way to the end of June. So you have school districts that don't know how much money they're really going to get, and they could have had it in March, as we did when I was co-chair of Ways and Means. We passed the K-12 budget first instead of leaving it to the very end.
So we know that can be done.
It can be done.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just politics as usual. I like the governor, nice guy, but leadership is not defined by your promises, it's by the outcomes. And he's had 3 terms, and in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have unemployment that's higher than the national average, and it's been that way since 1996, which was shortly after he first became governor. And we have 1/3 of our students not graduating with their classmates from high school. I mean, this cannot be allowed to continue, and it will as long as you have a manager of a bureaucracy instead of a leader of the state.
All right. Now, so there's enough money.
Yes.
To do what we need to do. And how come we never talk about wage freeze, hiring freeze, and cuts? How come we never talk about that?
Because the public sector unions control the building. I mean, they are the ones that collect wages, high amounts from, their fees from the wages of all of the public service employees, and they use a high percentage of that to recruit and fund campaigns for Democratic candidates who then can win and come into the legislature to make sure that the power that they control remains in their control. And it is an incestuous situation that impedes any progress, real progress in our state. And it has to be faced head on. I mean, the unions hate to have this be discussed openly, but it's the reality. We must change it.
Just kind of jumping around a little bit, do you expect a special session to handle the PERS issue, or are they just going to kick it through the primary season?
I wouldn't be surprised if we have a special session. Of course, all the people should be saying, if you couldn't solve it in a 5 or 6 month session, why would we think we're going to solve it now?
Well, but this governor's got a history of, 5 special sessions, 6 special sessions? I mean, he kind of likes them.
Well, what he does is he negotiates behind closed doors, and he tries to make it attractive to get the votes lined up before you hold the special session. So basically, the discussion is, we want to change some of the PERS provisions because, they don't say this, but because they're going to hurt us in the next election. And so we want to tweak it a little bit, and if you'll give us a tax increase, meaning enough votes to have the supermajority needed, so you have to have some Republican votes, then we'll give this change in the PERS system, and it'll be a little better than what it is right now. And so the Republicans are saying, okay, let's get this straight. You know you need to fix PERS. You're not going to fix it, but you want to tweak it to get rid of that $350 million can kicking problem, which we could talk about, where you get, you delay a payment for 2 years, and you end up losing $500 million in additional interest and $500 million in investment. So delaying a payment of $350 million for 2 years costs $1 billion in direct and indirect money for the taxpayers. Anyway, they want to get rid of that. That's a real embarrassment to them, but they did it without a single Republican vote. And so they say, so come back in and give us the additional tax increase, and we'll do what we should have done to begin with. But it still will not fix PERS, because the unions are not about to allow anything that would affect their current employees. It's only put the burden on those that have already retired.
I've been reading some of these public retirement articles and blogs, and Oregon was listed in there as a 50-50 chance of it going under.
Wow.
50% chance of it hitting the wall.
Yeah.
And we're acting it's a 2% problem.
Those that are in control now, the Democratic leaders that we have, in my opinion, I don't know if this is absolutely positive, but from what I know about them, they've never signed the front of an employment check. I mean, they've never been an employer. They've never gone without getting paid to make sure that their staff and employees get paid. And so it's always been, the money will come if you just get more people to pay in, so we can do good with other people's money, and it's always about rich people paying their fair share, without realizing that rich people leave the state and they need to come in because they're investors, they're entrepreneurs and inventors, and they're the ones that create businesses that grow, which creates jobs. And so we continue down this path of mediocrity because we don't have the vision of what it takes to have an economy that welcomes people and also utilizes natural resources in a respectful, and rational manner.
All right, now there's enough money. We got a spending problem. We got a public retirement problem that's mounting, and unemployment went up. I mean, this is not a rosy picture for the governor. And I want to take a break. When we come back, I want you to tell me, if you were governor for a day, what would you do to get jobs back in the state of Oregon? I mean, something that would stop that number today, all right? Dennis Richardson's with us. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back with Representative Dennis Richardson, who is now candidate for governor for the state of Oregon. And I think perhaps you have a little bit of a new record. Aren't you the earliest to get in?
No,
Have there been others?
There's a man named John Gustafson who
was in earlier than you. Oh, that's right.
He got in, and there's people talking about it. Realize you can't really file for the position until after September 12th, and so.
But you can announce anytime.
You can announce whenever you want.
Yeah.
I've talked to him. He's a nice guy.
Yeah. So 15 months or so, 16.
15 months, but it's necessary to get 51% of the votes.
Yeah.
See, we've got 39% of our registered voters are Democrat, 31% are Republican, and then about 30% are non-affiliated and other small parties and groups. And so I need to get turnout from the Republicans. I need to get turnout from the Blue Dog Democrats, the Democrats who are willing to say that, what we're doing is not working.
Are there any left?
There's several.
Really? Good. Well,
actually, I'm getting a lot of response. The newsletter I've been sending out for years has really gained a lot of attention, not just with Republicans, but with people all over the state.
Yeah.
And so they write me back and they say, I'm a Democrat and I don't agree with you on a lot of things, but I really do appreciate your position on balancing the budget and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I used your newsletter. It made me sound real smart on the budget.
Well, good.
All right, so you're governor for a day. We have back into the 8% unemployment. We're not attracting new businesses, and even Jackson County is not recovering. What would you do to get jobs back in the state?
Well, first thing, it's taken us 20 years to get in this position, and it's not going to be fixed in a day.
It
also depends on who's in the legislature.
Right.
If the Republicans were to take the majority in the House and the Senate, then it would be possible to make major changes. If it doesn't, then the governor becomes the representative, the advocate for our state across the nation and into foreign countries. And I've been going to China for 10 years, and China is now our largest export destination for services and products. And I mean, it's several $1 billion of revenue that comes into Oregon from Chinese consumers, and that will continue. What I would immediately do is begin working with the administrative rules that we have to lessen the burdens on government. It's amazing, on business. And just last week, Kathy went into our cleaners, the dry cleaners in Central Point, and the proprietor said, I want your husband to know I will be supporting him. And she says, oh really, why is that? So he says, look at this letter. And he shows this letter from the Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ, saying that his fees were going up 20%. He said, my income hasn't gone up 20%. I've had no claims. And it is just beyond my comprehension to see the government continue to pile on fees, penalties, fines, regulations that impede growth. So I'd like to expand my business. I would like to hire more people, but I can't do that when I don't have any consistency. I don't know what is going to come down next from Salem.
Is there any possibility of getting back to administrative oversight? I mean, why do these agencies have this arbitrary power to raise fees without some kind of a legislative review or overview?
Only because the legislature has allowed it to happen. They can make their changes by administrative rule, and then sometimes some cases they will raise fees or costs and then come to the legislature in the following session and retroactively get approval for what they've already done. And they're not supposed to do that, but they say in times of emergency they can do that. It's a situation where the bureaucracies have become so powerful that it's the tail wagging the dog. I mean, we need to empower employees of the state to be civil servants. They need to be trained. They need to have the ability to make decisions and when problems come up, and we need to trust them. But instead, we've got multiple layers of management, fiefdoms, silos, and it's always about expanding the bureaucracy and increasing the costs. And that's something that it's bad for business, it's bad in government, and it needs to stop.
Was a precedent set when the governor gave Nike a little bit special incentive to expand? Can that little act be expanded to other companies?
Well, it certainly can, and the Republicans wanted that to happen in the last session. But realize that what Nike said was they didn't get anything extra. They said, we want to know that you're not going to change the tax policy on us. And so what they got was a guarantee that things would stay the same. That is what business wants, is they want to be able to know that the game isn't going to change if they're going to make major investments into infrastructure and hiring and expanding in Oregon. They want to know that 5 years from now, the tax structure and so forth will be the same, and they won't be upside down in an economy that is controlled by a government instead of one where the government makes it a level playing field.
Would you consider a hiring freeze for the government, for the state?
Well, I think that I would certainly consider that, because we need to know where we're at before we just continue to grow. The social services and health services have increased by over 40% in their expenditures in recent years, where we passed a bill that will clear the way to add 250,000 more Oregonians to the Oregon Health Plan, to Medicaid, in the next 2 years. And these are people that will get government subsidies at up to 400% of the federal poverty level. So you have a family of 4 that can earn $92,000 a year and still get taxpayers subsidized health care for them, for their family, that's being paid for by new teachers that don't make half of that.
All right, a couple of other questions that we're getting emailed in. What do you think about the GMOs and that whole area, that problem, especially in Southern Oregon? You know, there's a move here on that.
Oh yeah, to me it's a very serious issue. I have people on both sides that want me to take a firm position on it, and I say, show me the science. I want to make a rational decision, because there's arguments on both sides. I mean, I want healthy food for my family and for everyone else. I also know that we're, as a nation, are feeding other countries, and they're depending on our ability to produce. And so I want not opinions, not passion, but I want the evidence, and I want to see where the evidence comes from.
All right, well, part of the export to China is food involved in that?
Oh yeah, wheat.
Okay, so if it's got GMO problems and they reject it, what did we do to ourselves?
Oh, it would be disastrous. But presently, there are federal regulations against using GMO for wheat. And so we had that problem that occurred up in northeastern Oregon. They still don't know the source of the GMO seed that kind of got mixed in. But anyway, they've checked all over the state, and it was in a very, very localized area, and it's not a problem at this point.
What happens if a county passes an anti-GMO policy? Can the state override that?
It would have to be determined. I mean, that's something that...
Because we're kind of heading down that road, aren't we?
I think so.
Yeah.
The federal government tries to tell states, you can't, we're going to preempt everything, until the states push back. The counties are told by the state, you can't do this, we're going to preempt things. And the state has the right to do that. Presently, they have not preempted it, in my opinion. And so it will be determined by the courts and by the system whether or not it would stand.
As governor, what would you say to, just a couple examples, say Josephine County, Curry County, that's really running low on funds, closing jails. Now, Curry County is just right on the edge of bankruptcy. What would you say to those people? What could you do to help them? Well,
first thing, I think the governor ought to be camping out in Washington, D.C. I mean, several years ago, I called a high-level official back in the Medicare division, it's called CMS, and was asking them about making changes and so forth. And they said, Representative, let me tell you how it really works here in Washington. You're a representative of your district, but there are 50 governors, and we are over 50 states. And so when a governor who represents all of the state wants something done, we pay attention and we have to respond accordingly. When it's a legislator, then, you know, it's just your opinion for your district, and we understand that.
Yeah, you could be gone in 2 years.
That's right. And so I said, thank you very much for saving me time and effort. I understand. I believe the governor needs to be doing more. I believe he needs to be more aggressive. I think that it is, look at these various points. Kansas has 1% of their land within their boundaries that's federally controlled, federally owned. Nebraska has 2%. North Dakota has 3%. Oregon has 53% of our land mass controlled by the federal government. Something's happened in between those states and ours. And no compensation.
And no feedback, no nothing.
Well, originally it happened because governors didn't want the cost of having to take care of land that they thought was really something they couldn't utilize. So the federal government creates the Bureau of Land Management. But now is different. And we need to have management of our forests in a rational way, not just continue to have them be ignored because of timidity in Washington, D.C. and fear of federal lawsuits.
We have thousands of acres burning as we speak in the state of Oregon that could rival the Biscuit Fire that we saw back in the early 2000s when President Bush came out and went out there. And there they sat. Unbelievable potential for resource and money. In fact, it even tied education to some of that revenue, and it went nowhere. And we're going to repeat this thing again. What could you do as governor to say, all right, you got all this thing burned up, the least we can do is get in there and clean it up and salvage something?
Well, you have to be willing to take a stand that's good for Oregon and not be kowtowing to the federal government because of the fear of losing funds. I mean, it's all about money ultimately, and we're dependent on the federal government for their funding, and they kind of quietly say, understand, if you take us on issues, you know, that could affect your funding. They're not supposed to say that, but that is the fear. I would be back in D.C., I'd be testifying before Congress, I'd be working with our federal elected officials to lobby and gain support for being able to utilize a healthy forest, to create healthy forests. By doing nothing, we only invite further catastrophe. That's no longer an option as far as I'm concerned for our state.
All right, and of course you're dealing with an administration now that's anything but friendly to the to our arguments. So you, you know, it could be a little tough. Listen, we got only about less than a minute to go. How do people get a hold of you? Want to learn more about your campaign? What's the best way to correspond?
At DennisRichardson.com.
All right.
Just go to the internet. DennisRichardson.com is the campaign website, and we respond to all questions, inquiries. We need help. We need volunteers. We need contributions, talent, time, and treasure.
Okay.
Help us win.
You have position papers there yet?
Not yet.
Okay, you will be.
The newsletters that I've sent have served like that.
This is just the beginning, I'm sure, of many visits, Dennis, and thanks and best to you, my friend, okay? We'll see you next time on Focus Today.